What if I told you that right now, behind closed doors in Europe, two power centers are locked in a silent war that could tear apart the world's largest economic bloc? While Americans worry about China, Russia, and our own political divisions, something much closer to home is unraveling. The European Union, our largest trading partner, the alliance that's supposed to keep Europe stable, is being ripped apart from the inside. And it's not Russia doing it. It's not China. It's Germany and Brussels fighting for control. This isn't just European drama. This affects your wallet, your security, and the entire global order America helped build after World War II. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will change how you see international politics forever. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because we dive deep into the geopolitical stories that mainstream media won't tell you. Today, we're talking about the European Union, but this isn't your typical boring EU video. This is about power, money, national pride, and a struggle that's been brewing since the very beginning. Here's what most Americans don't understand. The European Union isn't like the United States. It's not a country. It's a bizarre hybrid, somewhere between an alliance and a federation, and nobody can agree on what it should be. At the heart of this confusion is a battle between two forces. Brussels, the bureaucratic capital where unelected officials make rules for 450 million people, and Berlin, the capital of Europe's economic powerhouse, Germany, which pays the bills and wants to call the shots. Think of it like this. Imagine if Washington, D.C. made rules for all of North America, but Mexico and Canada had to follow them, and America paid most of the costs. How long would that last? That's the EU right now, and it's falling apart. In this video, we're going to cover how this power struggle actually started, the secret ways Germany controls EU policy, why smaller countries are getting crushed in the middle, on the breaking point that could destroy everything, and what this means for America. Let's get into it. To understand this war, you need to understand how the EU was born, because it was designed to fail from day one. After World War II, Europe was destroyed. America and the Soviet Union were the new superpowers. European leaders realized they had two choices: unite or become irrelevant. So in 1951, 6 countries, France, West Germany, Italy, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, created the European Coal and Steel Community. The idea was genius. If you make countries economically dependent on each other, they won't go to war. It worked. And it grew. By 1993, the European Union was born. By 2002, they had a common currency, the euro. By 2024, 27 countries were members. But here's the problem. The EU was built on a compromise that was never resolved. France wanted a political union, a United States of Europe, with Brussels as a powerful central government. Germany wanted an economic union, a free trade zone where countries could cooperate but keep their sovereignty. They couldn't agree, so they did both, and neither. The result? A Frankenstein's monster of an organization. Brussels got massive powers. It can make laws that override national laws. It controls trade, competition policy, agriculture, and increasingly immigration and foreign policy. But here's the catch. Brussels isn't a real government. The European Commission, which proposes all EU laws, isn't elected by the people. The European Parliament, which is elected, can't propose laws. They can only approve or reject what the Commission gives them. It's like if in America, the Senate could vote on bills, but only the Department of Commerce could write them. It's insane. In Germany became the economic engine. They have the biggest economy, the biggest population, and they pay the biggest share of the EU budget, about 25 billion euros per year, more than any other country. So you have Brussels making rules and Germany paying for them. What could go wrong? Here's what Americans need to understand about Germany's role. They're not just another EU member. They are the EU economy. Let me give you some numbers that will blow your mind. Germany's GDP is $4.1 trillion. That's bigger than France and Italy combined. It's the 4th largest economy in the world, right behind the US, China, and Japan. German exports? $1.6 trillion per year. They're the 3rd largest exporter on Earth. The EU's single market, that free trade zone of 450 million people, Germany dominates it. When a German company wants to sell cars to France, there are no tariffs, no customs, nothing. It's like selling from California to Texas. This gave Germany an enormous advantage. Their manufacturing sector exploded. Companies like Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes, Siemens, Bosch, they all became global giants by first conquering the European market. But here's where it gets interesting. Germany didn't just benefit from the EU, they shaped it. Every major EU policy has German fingerprints all over it. The euro currency. Germany insisted on stricter rules. No money printing to solve problems. No bailouts. Balanced budgets. Why? Because Germans are terrified of inflation after the hyperinflation of the 1920s destroyed their economy, so they forced their economic philosophy on everyone else. Austerity policies. During the 2008 financial crisis and the European debt crisis that followed, countries like Greece, Spain, Portugal, and Italy were drowning in debt. Brussels, under German pressure, forced them to cut spending, raise taxes, and shrink their governments. This devastated their economies. Unemployment in Greece hit 27%, in Spain, 26%. The fiscal compact. Germany pushed through rules that limit how much EU countries can borrow. If you run a deficit bigger than 3% of GDP, Brussels can fine you. Your economy is collapsing? Too bad. Germany wants fiscal discipline. Here's the brutal truth. Germany designed the EU to serve German interests, and for 20 years, it worked perfectly. But then, everything changed. The first major crack appeared in 2015, and it had nothing to do with economics. The Syrian refugee crisis. Over 1 million refugees and migrants flooded into Europe in 2015 alone. Most came through Greece and Italy, but where did they want to go? Germany. And here's the shocking part. Angela Merkel, Germany's chancellor, said yes. Wir schaffen das, she said. We can do this. Germany opened its doors. Over 1 million refugees arrived. Brussels loved it. They tried to force other EU countries to take refugees too, using something called mandatory quotas. Each country would have to accept a certain number, but Poland said no. Hungary said no. The Czech Republic said no. Why? Because they weren't consulted. Brussels, with Germany's backing, made the decision and tried to impose it on everyone else. This was the moment many Eastern European countries realized the EU isn't a partnership. It's a dictatorship. And Germany pulls the strings. The second crack was Brexit. In 2016, the United Kingdom voted to leave the EU. Why? Because British voters were tired of Brussels making their laws, tired of unelected bureaucrats in Belgium telling them what to do. The EU's response? Punish them. Make Brexit as painful as possible to scare other countries from leaving. And it worked. The UK economy took a hit. Trade became more complicated. But here's what the EU didn't expect. Brexit didn't scare other countries into submission. It inspired them. Suddenly, nationalist and Eurosceptic parties started gaining ground everywhere. In France, Italy, Netherlands, Austria, Sweden. The message was clear. People don't want more Brussels. They want less. But Brussels didn't listen, and neither did Germany. The third crack was COVID-19. When the pandemic hit in 2020, the EU initially fell apart. Countries closed borders. Italy begged for help and nobody came. France and Germany hoarded medical supplies. It was every country for itself. Brussels was humiliated. This was supposed to be a union. Instead, it looked like 27 separate countries with no solidarity. So what did they do? They went all in. In 2020, the EU approved a €750 billion recovery fund. For the first time ever, the EU would borrow money collectively and distribute it to member states. This was revolutionary. It was the closest thing to fiscal union the EU had ever done. But guess who controlled it? Brussels and Germany. And guess what came with the money? Conditions, reforms, oversight. Countries like Hungary and Poland, which were already fighting with Brussels over rule of law and democratic standards, saw this as blackmail. You want our money? Change your laws. Follow our rules. So where are we today? Let me break down the current battlegrounds where Brussels and Berlin are fighting for control. Battlefield number 1. Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 exposed Germany's biggest vulnerability: energy dependence. For years, Germany got cheap natural gas from Russia through the Nord Stream pipelines. German industry ran on Russian gas. It was the foundation of their economic model. Eastern European countries, especially Poland and the Baltic states, warned Germany for years. You're making us dependent on Putin. This is dangerous. Germany ignored them, and Brussels did nothing. Then Russia invaded. Gas prices exploded. Germany's economy, the engine of Europe, started sputtering. Now here's where it gets interesting. Brussels used the crisis to grab more power. They started making EU-wide energy policy, telling countries where to buy gas, how to store it, how to distribute it. Germany initially resisted, but then realized they needed EU solidarity to survive the crisis. So they went along with it, but on their terms. Meanwhile, Poland and other Eastern European countries are furious. They're paying high energy prices to support Ukraine and cut off Russia. While Germany, the country that created this mess, is still trying to call the shots. Battlefield number 2. The migration issue never went away. In 2023, over 380,000 irregular migrants reached the EU. Brussels wants a new migration pact with mandatory solidarity. That means if Italy and Greece are overwhelmed, other countries must help, either by taking refugees or paying money. Germany supports this. Why? Because they need workers. Germany's population is aging. Their birth rate is 1.5 children per woman. They need immigration to keep their economy growing. But Poland, Hungary, and other Eastern European countries refuse. They don't want migrants from Africa and the Middle East, period. So Brussels is threatening to withhold funds. Hungary has already lost billions in EU funding because they won't comply with Brussels' rule of law standards. This is the power struggle in action. Brussels and Germany trying to force their vision on countries that fundamentally disagree. Battlefield number 3, defense and strategic autonomy. This is where it gets really interesting for Americans. For decades, Europe relied on the US for security through NATO. But after Trump questioned America's commitment, and with the war in Ukraine raging, Europe is talking about strategic autonomy. Translation, they want their own military capability independent of America. France is leading this charge. They want an EU army, EU defense industry, EU strategic independence. Germany is conflicted. They know they need to spend more on defense, but they also don't want to upset America, their most important security guarantor. Brussels sees this as an opportunity. If they can control defense policy, they become a true geopolitical power. But here's the problem. Most EU countries don't trust each other enough to create an EU army, and they definitely don't trust Brussels to command it. So you have this ridiculous situation where everyone agrees Europe needs to do more, but nobody can agree on how, and Brussels and Germany are fighting over who gets to decide. Battlefield number 4, economic policy and industrial strategy. Germany's economic model is broken, and everyone knows it. For 20 years, Germany ran huge trade surpluses, exporting way more than they imported. This made Germany rich, but created imbalances. Other EU countries couldn't compete. Now Germany is facing a reckoning. Chinese competition is crushing German car makers. Energy costs are high. Their infrastructure is crumbling. Germany needs the EU more than ever, but they still want to control EU economic policy. Meanwhile, France wants industrial policy, government subsidies, protection from Chinese competition. Brussels is trying to navigate between these two giants, and smaller countries are left out completely. So what's the end game here? Where does this power struggle lead? There are 3 possible scenarios. Scenario 1, the German-Brussels alliance wins. In this scenario, Brussels consolidates power with German backing. The EU becomes more centralized, more fiscal union, more political integration, more laws from Brussels. Countries that don't comply get punished financially. Eventually, some countries like Hungary or Poland might leave or get pushed out. What's left is a smaller, more integrated EU, basically Germany and its allies, running a tight ship. This is what Brussels dreams about. But here's the problem. Half of Europe doesn't want this, and forcing it could trigger more Brexit-style exits. Scenario 2, the nationalist revolt succeeds. In this scenario, nationalist and Eurosceptic parties keep gaining power across Europe. Italy, Netherlands, France, all elect governments that oppose Brussels. These governments demand power back. They refuse to follow EU rules. They threaten to leave. Eventually, the EU becomes a weak trade zone with no real political power. Brussels becomes irrelevant. Germany loses its captive market and has to compete globally without EU protection. This is what nationalists want. But here's the problem. Europe has real challenges, climate change, defense, China, Russia, that require cooperation. Can 27 separate countries handle this alone? Scenario 3, the messy middle, continued dysfunction. This is the most likely scenario and maybe the worst. The EU continues as it is, dysfunctional, divided, lurching from crisis to crisis. Brussels and Germany keep fighting with nationalist governments. Every decision requires endless negotiations and compromises that satisfy nobody. The EU becomes weaker and weaker while the world moves on. China rises, America focuses on Asia, Russia exploits divisions. Europe becomes a museum, rich in history but irrelevant in the future. None of these scenarios are good for America. A strong, stable EU is in American interests. They're our largest trading partner, $1.3 trillion in trade per year. They're our most important military allies through NATO. But a divided, dysfunctional EU? That's a problem. It means Russia can exploit divisions. China can play countries against each other with belt and road investments. It means less support for American foreign policy. And it means Europe can't be the partner America needs in an increasingly multipolar world. So here's the bottom line. The power struggle between Brussels and Berlin isn't just European drama. It's a fight over the future of the Western Alliance. Germany wants to maintain its economic dominance while paying lip service to European solidarity. Brussels wants to build a federal Europe with itself at the center. Nationalist governments want their sovereignty back, and nobody is willing to compromise. The tragedy is that Europe has so much potential. 450 million people, the world's second largest economy, incredible technology, education, and human capital. But they're trapped in a system that doesn't work, fighting battles that can't be won, with leaders who won't admit the truth. And that truth is this. The European Union as currently designed is unsustainable. Either it moves toward full federation, with countries giving up sovereignty, and Brussels becoming a real government, or it moves toward a looser confederation, with Brussels losing power and countries regaining independence. The current middle ground, where Brussels has massive power but no democratic legitimacy, where Germany dominates but pretends it doesn't, where smaller countries have to follow rules they didn't make, it can't last. Something's got to give. The question is, what breaks first? The EU's institutions, Germany's economy, or the patience of European voters? My bet? In the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see either a major EU country leave, a massive institutional reform, or a complete breakdown of the current system. And America needs to be ready, because when Europe sneezes, the world catches a cold. So what do you think? Is the EU doomed? Can Brussels and Berlin find a way to work together? Or is this power struggle going to tear everything apart? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you found this video valuable, please smash that like button. It really helps the algorithm show this to more people. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We post deep dives like this every week on the geopolitical stories that matter. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. I've got some incredible videos coming up on China's economic crisis, the future of NATO, and America's strategy in the Middle East. You won't want to miss those. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.